What's up there, Workforce? Chris here with Work to Game, and it is time to talk about inventory management. Now, we talked about this a little leading up to the expansion, and I had a system that was working for me through Stormblood, but over the last 4 weeks, I have intentionally ignored my entire system. I have shoved things in retainers based on the amount of space available, not based on any other system. I have rolled on just about everything. I have kept stuff. I have a mountain of things to deal with, and so this should be a good chance to go through and try out a bunch of different kind of concepts. And this is going to be a long guide, so we're just going to sit down and talk about inventory. So the first thing you're going to want to do is take stock of how much junk you have, and adding more retainers just prolongs the problem. It makes it worse when you get it, because to show you my problem, I have 4 retainers. They're all at 175 items apiece. My Chocobo saddlebag is stacked all the way up, and then my inventory, which is in expanded mode, it has almost all 4 tabs. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to sort these inventories by just right-click sort. And you can already see that, for example, I have bait here, and that was because I forgot that I had bait here. So by being disorganized, I am off buying more bait when I had more bait. So you end up with just these huge stacks. These fruit worms, for example, I now have like 300 fruit worms, and I don't need that. And so having a system where you're either using your Chocobo saddlebag for, like last expansion, I was using it for materia. This time around, I think I'm going to be doing a little more fishing, so I'll probably want to save some room for bait. You can see that I have my tokens for Eden and my tokens for Eden, so you definitely don't want to forget that. You can always see if you have more by going right click and go search for item. And that will say, hey, you've got 1 in your saddlebag and 2 in your inventory for, and it'll even tell you kind of where it is, that it's in section 3. So that as I'm looking for it, these are section 1, 2, and then the next page is 3 and 4. And so the first thing you want to do is you want to decide what is taking up the most space that would be the easiest to consolidate. And for me, that's going to be fish. Odds are there's fish in multiple of my retainers where I have the same fish in multiple places, so they could be stacked. They're also very easy to get rid of. So I have a couple of options there. So I'm going to go ahead and dig through all my retainers, and the goal is to get fish. And then I have 3 options. I could use the fish in a crafting thing, but I would have to have the other materials on hand, or I would have to add items to my inventory. And with less than 30 slots left, I don't want to do that. I can also just vendor the fish if they're not going to sell well on the market board. So basically sell them to either another player or to a vendor. And I can also descent them. Now, this is not the time to level descent because I don't have the inventory space to spare to do it. But I already have my Culinarian Descent leveled up to cover all of the Stormblood fish and below, not yet the Shadowbringers fish. And so I could actually descent any fish that is Stormblood or earlier. So I'm going to go ahead and dig through that, and we will get to this. All right, so we're back, and I have gotten as much as I could kind of grab in a first pass. It doesn't mean there's not others, because I do have just about 80 items listed, and I know some of those are fish. And so what I would now like to do is decide if any of these fish have value. And the way we're going to evaluate value is you have 20 slots times the number of retainers you have. You have 2 retainers base, and then you have more retainers based on how many you've chosen to add to the cost of your account. And I think it's $2 a month. And so with that in mind, it's time to get these listed. I personally don't like to list anything that's less than 1,000 gil a stack right now, because it's just not worth the spot. I like to know that if all my listings sold, I'd make a minimum of 80,000 gil. And actually, sometimes I up that to 5,000 or something like that. But I also don't want to tie up listings with things that don't sell very often. Right now, I'm in the middle of I was making some guild guides and stuff, so I still have some vendor gear left over and things like that. But you want to kind of also, something that's going to take a month to sell, that doesn't really help me either. It doesn't matter if it sells for 1 million gil. It's still taking up that slot for a month. And there's a risk that if only one of those sells per month, that somebody undercuts me at 990,000, and then, it ends up selling, and then I have to wait another month, because you have to be the lowest price available at the time of the purchase. So you want there to be lots of turnover so that you don't have to worry so much about somebody, undercutting you, and then there not being another buyer to buy you for being second in line. So with those kind of things in mind, I'm actually now going to dig through all my listings. I'm going to pull all my fish off my listings, and then we're going to see where we can get that listed. I choose to have one of my retainers focus on fish. So because I have so many, we're going to try to get everything onto Amazonian Primal, one of my 3 retainers, and we're going to try to move all of my listings onto there, and then we are going to desynthesize any fish that is not able to be sold. So that means that because I don't want to vendor it because they're worth more than vendor as desynth. So I am going to go ahead and destroy them. And that means there could be a fish that's worth 500 gil on its own. And if I had 99 of those, that would be 100% be worth selling, but I'm not going to go out fishing trying to build this up to the point where I can get rid of it. Let's just clear it out. This is a cleaning day. So let's get to it. Okay, and we're back, but the problem is now that with all of the fish off of my retainers, I only have one slot remaining in my inventory. So one of the issues you may run into if you wait too long to do this is that I have so little space to work with that I can't actually clear the items that my retainer currently has listed to replace them with the items I would like to list without doing them kind of one at a time. And so I can literally go in here and I can say Harbor Herring, put up for sale. And I can see that these are worthless, so I move on to the next fish. And when I get to one selling, I'm going to clear off 8 of those, and then I'm going to remove these 8 listings, of the gear, and then I'm going to replace those with fish, and we're going to kind of just dig through this until we can start to kind of swim our way back up to not drowning in just too many items. Okay, and here's a good example of where undercutting doesn't need to be done by 1 gil. So you can see that I have a high quality fish. It's being sold at 4,000. It should be worth something above this. But if I go to the history tab, you can see that high quality has been typically going for 200 to 300. Now 200 to 300 is a lot less than 4,000. So I could drop it to 200 or 300. That is what the market seems to be willing to buy. It goes back as far as January, so they don't sell very often. But I could also try to make somebody, that wants to try to list this for closer to the 4,000, I could make them a good deal and still be above the 300. So I'm going to try listing this at 1,500. And then if I come back tomorrow and it hasn't sold, maybe I'll lower it to 1,400, 1,300, and so on until it sells, with the goal of getting it down around that 200 or 300 price point, where obviously it would have dropped below its 1,000 for the stack because I just have the one, and it will end up getting desynthesized. So just kind of an example of something to pay attention to. And you can see as I dig through these fish that it's a good reminder that A, do your research before you go out fishing to know what you want to fish a lot of, and B, don't just fish a little of everything because they're in small enough stacks that even if they have individual decent value as a fish, they're not worth anything because anything times 1 or 2 is not nearly as good as something worth times 70, times 80, where a lesser valuable item in a larger stack may actually be worth listing. Okay, and so as we've gotten a decent number here, you can see that I've passed a lot of these fish up because they're just not worth listing. So everything to this gap that's not the gear I pulled off to make room for more listings is trash. And so what I would do at this point is I would either go craft something with it, which I should have evaluated in the first place if that was something I was interested in doing, or in this case, it is now time to vendor it or desynth it, whichever is worth more. I have found that desynth is always worth more than vendor price. Oftentimes it's actually worth more than market price in your cheaper fish. So that's why I can set that kind of minimum and just kind of go ahead and blast through these. And it's why if they keep dropping in price because they're not selling, I don't mind desynthing them because you get a lot of like cracked clusters or you get a lot of like the clusters for crafting and things like that out of this. So you can actually get things that are worth a couple hundred a piece. I think ours are trading at like 168 for the water crystals right now, which drops off a lot of the Stormblood fish. So, when you're getting a couple of those, you can easily be worth anywhere from 100 to 400 per fish. Fairly straightforward when you get into the higher level stuff. This one says desynthesis of 27. So if I go ahead and desynth this, it's not going to do anything amazing. You're going to end up with sand and then the smaller shards. But the high quality sand actually does sell well on my server. The normal quality will end up just being vendored. So let's go ahead and dig into the beginning of that. Now, just a reminder, the desynthesis menu is a little bit faster. So just be careful that you're not desynthesizing anything that you didn't already earmark for it, since we still have fish in here that we're not sure of yet. But like these ash tunas were up first, so we can go ahead and desynth those. And this menu just is a little bit quicker when you have larger stacks. And so I just find that that's something that just makes it a little bit faster. I drag it somewhere on my bar so I can open it up quicker than kind of digging through my actions menu. So you can see I'm already starting to get things like an Allegan piece that'll just sell for a flat 100 gil. And so this is all great options. Another thing to remind yourself of is Dome and Enclave. It will actually give you 20% more vendoring for things. So if you have stuff that's vendoring for a lot, especially like these pieces, you can always make a trip out there once a week to kind of cap that out if you're just really trying to max min how much money you make here. So I'm going to keep working away at this, and we will revisit when we are totally done with all of the fish. Now, one of the things that I've been doing as I do this is, for example, say that we go to crystal knives here. I'm going to have to drag something out of because I'm already at 20 of 20 here. And so we go look at crystal knives. This is just an example. So you can see that it's 100 gil for the bottom price on normal quality, 321 on the high quality. Now imagine you only had one high quality and you had 15 normal quality. Well, the 15 normal quality would clear my kind of minimum price for the stack, but the one high quality would not. So what you can actually do is you can go in and you can right click on a high quality and you can lower the quality. It'll have a confirmation box and that will allow it to stack with your normal qualities to further increase that. So you can add that one on, or if you have 5 high qualities and 40 normal qualities, you can take those 5 and absorb them. You only do that when you're running really tight on retainer spaces to sell things, and you don't think that the high qualities are ever going to be worth selling, and you don't plan on acquiring more. High quality should always command more value, but this is just kind of a last resort. Okay, so what I've done at this point is I've actually gone through and I got rid of every fish that could be decent. So none of my Shadowbringers fish got rid of. I also, that was not worth something. And then I actually listed the top 20 listings, the most net value. And then anything that was above 1,000, but less than that, I pulled off and I will save for a later date. So there were things in here. Let's say your lowest list price is 5,000. Well, anything that's 4,000, I don't have room for it, but I'll hold on to it so that when those things start to sell, I have a backlog of fish that are actually worth something here. I still have non-fish items on this retainer, which we'd like to long-term fix if possible. So I've pulled off a bunch of other things, and then I've actually gone ahead and I've stuffed my inventory entirely full of crafting items. I've also cleared the auctions off of one of my retainers with the plan of listing my top 20 here, and then the goal will be to move that first retainer's inventory to being entirely just different crafting items, anything that could be used, even the market prohibited stuff. Just start clogging it full of non-fish items that are other things in the game, and then we'll see where that gets us. And so now we are done. So let me just show you kind of what I've done here. So the first thing is that I need to sort my actual inventory. Is there's some things that there's just piled up that don't have a place. So I have a lot of bait, like an exceptional amount of bait. So I need to go through and see, do I actually need all of these baits, or can those just be vendored? Sometimes they can actually be sold for a profit on the market board. I also have these, various things like my cracked the new clusters to get materia. I keep my different consumables on me, like my, to get my companion out. And I actually have a couple of tokens around. And what I've sorted into, and this may be different for you, is I've actually sorted all crafting ingredients into red thing. My first one, my third one is only fish. And then my second one and fourth one are gear, which is currently spilling over into my bag here, where I'd prefer to keep different kind of tokens around. I'm actually trying to go back and collect some of these sets. So I, keep the different tokens there. That's where my Eden tokens are right now. It'd be nice to actually keep bait there as well, but the only way that's going to happen is if this left side clears out. So the next step, and this is much longer than I'm actually going to get to today, would be to go through and decide, does some of this need to be kind of used for glamour? Can some of this be taken to my grand company to be turned into seals there? Is some of this things that I'm going to use for decent? Keep in mind, you can only max out your decent in a handful of them, so it's not like you can keep everything for that. So I'm going to be doing culinarian, goldsmith, and armor as my 3 that I'm going to kind of push to cap there. And everything else just needs to get vendored if it's not market prohibited or cannot be turned in for grand company seals. And so after I kind of clear those out, you can see that I now have all of this space when I'm on my person. And then I actually have crafting materials only at 154 and fish is only at 153. And so I actually have room to get up to that 175, which really freed up a lot of space. I freed up, at least 100 slots with just an initial pass. And then one final trick that I can show you here is if I open up a retainer, I can actually, if you're listing things and you have stuff to vendor, you can always right click, have them sell that right there. So I can go ahead and have those vendor, because I'm not going to go out to Dome and Enclave for this and do that. And so I can get those vendored. And then the reason I kept these cards is I can actually go over to Golden Saucer and I can turn those in for MGP there at the card dealer. And so I'm going to go turn those in, and then that'll be a good breakpoint. That got my inventory clear. So that should be enough to show you guys the rough path to getting your inventory clear. It may vary based on the number of retainers you have, the kind of items you generate. Maybe you don't fish at all. And so just look at like where your items are piling up. You can see items are actually my core issue here. So I need to go through and decide, okay, with my Gunbreaker approaching 80 and the fact that I'm not going to be leveling any other tanks this expansion, I need to question why I would keep any tank gear outside of my active set for my Gunbreaker and my Warrior to share. And that's really it. I would still keep my Paladin set and my Dark Knight set equipped to them in the armory chest, but I don't need anything that's not their current set because I'm not actively leveling them right now, and it's not hard to come by gear if I decide to start actively leveling them. So I can go ahead and pitch all those fending sets that I have for the various level increments, and then if I decide to level one of those, then I can always go back and kind of gear them up manually by reacquiring that gear. It wasn't hard to get the first time. It won't be hard to get the next time. So I can definitely get rid of that. And then I can kind of follow that line of thought all the way down through my classes as I work through my draft. So as I level up my Dancer and I level up my Bard, that'll finish out my physical range DPS, and any physical range DPS that they don't need in my inventory or my armory chest can get pitched as I level up my Black Mage, and you can see this theme kind of going on. So really you have to question, are you getting to leveling it anytime soon? And if you're not, get rid of the gear. Get it out of your inventory or set it aside for glamour. Use your glamour dresser and definitely keep that stuff to a minimum, and you will find that your inventory gets a lot thinner a lot faster. It hurts to vendor things for 5 or 10 or 25 gil when it goes on the market board for 200 or 300, but if you have just that one ingot and you do that times 10, then you've got 10 inventory slots tied up over, at 300 gil apiece, over 3,000 gil. And 3,000 gil is just not very much. So you should just vendor them, even though you're taking the 3,000 gil hit. And down the line, should you need to rebuy those, you're going to need more than one anyway. You're just going to have to acquire that extra one then, and you're going to get those 10 inventory slots until that time. So I hope this makes sense, guys. My name is Chris with Work to Game. I hope this inventory guide absolutely just helps kind of enlighten some of that discussion for you guys. Definitely let me know in the comments below, maybe some tips and tricks you guys use. I just wanted to show myself cleaning this up, and from here on out in the expansion, I'll clean up this gear over the next week or two, and then I will have a completely clean inventory, and I'll stick to that for the next 2 years, and I can reevaluate at the beginning of 6.0. My name is Chris with Work to Game. Have a fantastic day, and I'll see you next time.